My name is Morgan, and I'm 30 years old. When my brother graduated, my father bought him a luxury San Francisco penthouse. When I graduated, he handed me an abandoned farmhouse and a dead olive orchard in the Central Valley. He didn't even look up. Take the old place. At least you can't ruin anything important. I didn't beg. I didn't argue. I moved in. The difference between us started exactly 4 years ago, May 2021. My brother Zachary was 35, wearing a sharp suit and sharper expectations. My father, Richard, 62, toasted him at an upscale steakhouse in the city. The bill came to $940. Halfway through the main course, my father stood up, clearing his throat to command the table's attention. Zachary, your mother and I want you to focus on your tech ventures, so we bought you a place. Zachary's eyebrows went up. My mother, Patricia, was smiling like she'd orchestrated a masterpiece. Nob Hill, my father continued. Top floor. You move in next month. Zachary laughed. Not a laugh of surprise, but of expectation. You bought me a penthouse? $1.5 million, my father said, not flinching at the number. Plus, we're giving you $50,000 for furniture. Get yourself set up properly. They hugged. Happy tears. Success tears. I sat at the end of the table and did the math in my head. $1,500,000 for the penthouse, $50,000 for the furniture, $1,550,000 total. My mother touched my hand. Your turn will come, sweetheart. I believed her. 3 years later, I graduated with a degree in agricultural technology. I'd worked double shifts for 4 years to keep my loans under control. We went to a diner for my celebration. The bill was $65. No announcement, no speech. 3 days later, my father called me into his study and handed me a manila folder. Inside was a property deed, 20 acres in the Central Valley, an abandoned farmhouse last renovated in 1982, a dead olive orchard. I looked at the appraisal document. Property value, $300,000. There was a sticky note in my father's handwriting. Soil is dead, barely worth the land. Property tax is $5,800 a year. That's on you. I stared at him. You're giving Zachary a penthouse? And you're giving me a tax burden? Zachary needed an investment, my father replied smoothly. This is just something for you to start with. At least you can't ruin anything important. The gap was $1,250,000. That's how much less I was worth to them. I didn't cry. I just closed the folder. Okay, I said. On June 14th, I pulled into the dirt driveway. The house smelled like dust and rot. The water heater was broken, and a replacement was $2,100. I checked my bank account. $42. That night, the temperature dropped. I boiled water on a rusted stove to take a lukewarm bath, shivering as I thought about Zachary's heated marble floors. I pulled out my father's sticky note. Barely worth the land. I folded it and put it in my wallet. I was going to keep that note. I was going to make this dead dirt worth more than his entire life. The first year, the family didn't call. No visits. No text messages asking if I was surviving the blistering Central Valley heat. I spent my days walking the 20 acres, mapping the dead soil. I planted small patches of drought-resistant herbs, selling them at local farmers markets just to cover the property taxes. I made $38 my first weekend. It was grueling, invisible work, but my silence was a strategy. On a sweltering Tuesday in August, a woman stopped by my market stall. She introduced herself as Valerie, a soil agronomist for the county. You grew these in the old fry orchard? She asked, examining a bundle of rosemary. That land has been dead for decades. I'm working on it, I replied defensively. She looked at me, her eyes narrowing. May I see your land? Because if you're growing this quality of crop on that specific parcel, You don't know what you're actually sitting on." 2 days later, Valerie walked my property. She didn't look at the trees. She looked at the county maps she brought with her. "Your father gave you this land because he thought it was worthless," she said, tapping a blue line on the paper. "But he didn't check the historical deeds. Morgan, this property sits directly over a pristine, grandfathered commercial aquifer. You have unrestricted, high-volume water rights in the middle of a drought-stricken state." I stared at her. "Water rights?" "Liquid gold," she corrected. "With the right irrigation infrastructure, this dead soil can yield premium, high-density crops. Olive oil, lavender, specialized botanicals. You just need the capital to tap the well." I didn't have capital. I had an empty bank account and a maxed-out credit card. But I had the land. I took a massive risk, securing a brutal, high-interest commercial loan using the water rights as collateral. I hired a crew. We tapped the aquifer. We installed state-of-the-art drip irrigation. We planted thousands of premium olive trees and acres of high-yield botanicals. For 2 years, I worked 80-hour weeks. By 2024, the orchard didn't just survive. It exploded. I documented the transformation on social media. I posted a video showing the cracked, dead earth transitioning into lush, blooming rows of green. The caption read, "They handed me dead dirt. I found the ocean underneath." The video hit 4 million views in 2 days. Then 10 million orders for our premium artisanal olive oil and botanical extracts flooded in. By the end of the quarter, our monthly revenue crossed $85,000. I was shipping products to high-end boutiques nationwide. I had 9 employees. I was breathing life into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. And still, my family didn't call until Zachary's world fell apart. The 12th of May, 2025. I was in the newly renovated farmhouse office reviewing a distribution contract when I heard tires crunching on the gravel. I looked out the window. A luxury SUV, my mother, Patricia, stepped out wearing a cashmere sweater that cost more than my first irrigation pump. It was her first visit in 4 years. She didn't look at the blooming orchards. She didn't congratulate me. She walked straight into my office, her face tight with panic. "Zachary is in trouble," she said, not even saying hello. "Serious trouble. He lost everything." I leaned back in my chair. Everything? His tech startup was a crypto scam. It collapsed. He owes private creditors $1.8 million. The Penthouse is foreclosed. Your father and I have leveraged our retirement, but we are short. She finally looked around the room, taking in the expensive computers, the sleek packaging, the undeniable evidence of wealth. "We saw your videos. This place is worth millions now. You have 72 hours to sign the deed over to us. We're liquidating the orchard to cover your brother's debts." I stared at her, letting the silence stretch. "You want me to give you my business? It's family duty, Morgan. Zachary can't start from zero at 39. You're younger. You can build something else." I looked into my mother's eyes and finally understood the sickness of our family dynamic. This wasn't just favoritism. It was an ingrained, systemic delusion. In her mind, Zachary was the son, and I was merely a satellite. The golden child is an extension of the parent's ego. His failure is their failure, and it must be erased at all costs. Because I was the scapegoat, my grueling, self-made success caused them cognitive dissonance. They couldn't accept that I had outshone him. To resolve this psychological discomfort, my mother had instantly reclassified my private enterprise as communal family property. She genuinely believed she had the right to harvest my blood, sweat, and tears simply to restore the family hierarchy she preferred. My success was only allowed to exist if it served her favorite son. "I built this from dead dirt," I said softly. "You gave him $1.5 million. You gave me a tax burden." "He made a mistake," she snapped, her voice rising. "Do you want your brother to be ruined? He didn't make a mistake, I corrected. He gambled on magic internet money and lost. Those were decisions. Her face hardened into a mask of pure entitlement. You have 72 hours, Friday at noon. Your father and Zachary will be here with the transfer papers. Have your things packed. She turned on her heel and walked out. She genuinely thought I would bow my head and comply. She thought I was still the girl shivering in a dark bathtub with $42. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. The moment my mother's SUV disappeared down the road, I picked up the phone. I didn't call a therapist. I called Marcus. Marcus was the CEO of an ag tech venture capital firm who had been quietly circling my business for 6 months. He wanted my grandfathered water rights and my branding. I had previously turned him down. Now, I was ready to talk. Marcus, I said when he answered, I want to initiate the buyout, but we have to close by Friday at noon. No extensions. That's aggressive, Morgan. Why the rush? Family complications. If you can push the paperwork through, I'll sign for $5.2 million. He didn't hesitate. I'll have my legal team on it in 10 minutes. For the next 48 hours, my world was a blur of corporate attorneys, NDAs, and rapid-fire audits. I was selling the agricultural operations, the brand, and the water rights, but I explicitly carved out the farmhouse and 2 acres of land for myself. I negotiated a ruthless contingency. I would remain as the CEO of operations with a multi-year contract, a massive salary, and total autonomy. I wasn't losing my kingdom. I was weaponizing it. But on Thursday afternoon, my lead attorney, Savannah, called me. Her voice was uncharacteristically grim. Morgan, we hit a snag in the title search. I need you to look at a document I just emailed you. I opened the file. It was a forged power of attorney and a private loan application. The applicants were Richard and Patricia Fry. They tried to take out a massive hard money loan against the orchard, Savannah explained. They attempted to use the property as collateral for Zachary's creditors. I felt the blood drain from my face. They don't own the property. My name is on the deed. I know, Savannah said softly. Morgan, they forged your signature to grant themselves power of attorney. Our due diligence team flagged it when verifying the title. Your parents knew about the water rights. They've known for months. They gave you this land hoping you'd fail so they could reclaim it later for pennies. When you succeeded, they tried to illegally mortgage it behind your back. When that failed because private lenders demanded a site visit, your mother showed up demanding you just hand it over. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just toxic parenting. It wasn't just entitlement or a desperate plea to save a sibling. This was a calculated criminal conspiracy. They had actively tried to commit real estate fraud to steal my life's work. Any lingering shred of guilt, any tiny voice in my head telling me to be a good daughter, evaporated instantly. Can we still close the buyout? I asked, my voice turning to ice. Yes, Savannah said. The documents are fraudulent, so they hold no legal weight. We can close tomorrow morning. But Morgan, you have the evidence to send them to state prison. I know, I said. Send the final contracts. We're going to have a very crowded signing ceremony tomorrow. I hung up the phone. I didn't just want to stop them. I wanted to publicly, thoroughly dismantle their illusion of control. They had given me 72 hours. I was going to use every second of it. Friday, 11:45 a.m. The California sun was beating down on the orchard. I had instructed my staff to set up a massive white tent right on the front lawn. Caterers were circulating with champagne. 60 guests were seated in rows: local politicians, venture capitalists, agricultural partners, and journalists from major business publications. At the front of the tent sat a heavy oak table with the 400-page acquisition contract waiting to be signed. At exactly 11:55 a.m., a silver pickup truck rattled down the driveway. Zachary was driving, his face pale and exhausted. My father sat in the passenger seat. They had cardboard boxes in the truck bed. Ready to pack up my life, I watched from the podium as Zachary threw the truck into park. He stepped out, holding a manila envelope, presumably the deed transfer he expected me to sign. He took 3 steps toward the house before he noticed the tent, the cameras, and the crowd of high-net-worth individuals staring at him. He froze. His face went completely slack. My father stepped out next, his arrogant stride faltering as he realized he had walked into a corporate summit. "Morgan!" my father hissed, trying to keep his voice down as he marched toward the tent. "What the hell is this? We had an agreement. Tell these people to leave." I tapped the microphone. The feedback shrieked, silencing the entire lawn. "Welcome, everyone," I announced, looking dead into my father's eyes. "Thank you for joining me for the acquisition signing of Central Valley Botanicals." Zachary dropped his envelope. It hit the dirt with a soft thud. Marcus, the VC CEO, stepped up to the microphone beside me. "Today, Verdant Capital is proud to acquire this extraordinary enterprise for $5.2 million. A collective gasp echoed from my family's direction. My father looked as if the air had been violently sucked from his lungs. $5.2 million. The dead dirt he had handed me as a joke was now worth more than triple the golden child's entire existence. But more importantly, Marcus continued, Morgan has agreed to stay on as our chief executive officer. She isn't going anywhere. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. I picked up my pen and signed the contract on the dotted line. The ink was barely dry before Zachary charged the table, his face red with panic and rage. "You knew!" Zachary screamed over the applause, oblivious to the cameras capturing his meltdown. "You knew we needed this to save me from bankruptcy. You selfish little—" "Save you?" I interrupted, my voice amplified by the speakers. "You lost nearly $2 million on crypto scams, Zachary. You mortgaged your penthouse. You destroyed your own life." "We're a family," my father roared, stepping in front of Zachary. "You owe us. We gave you this land." I signaled to Savannah. She stepped forward and handed my father a legal folder. "That is a copy of the forged power of attorney you attempted to use to mortgage this property last week," I said, my voice dropping to a lethal calm. "My legal team's auditors caught your forged signatures. We have forwarded the originals to the district attorney for a criminal fraud investigation." My father looked at the documents, all the color draining from his face. The arrogance vanished, replaced by stark, shivering terror. The journalists in the front row were frantically typing on their phones. The golden family, the perfect son, the entitled parents completely exposed, humiliated, and legally cornered in front of the entire county. The fallout was swift and absolute. My father's attempt to illegally mortgage my property caught the attention of state fraud investigators. Facing multiple counts of real estate fraud, my parents were forced to liquidate their retirement accounts just to afford defense attorneys. They avoided prison, but they lost everything else. Their social standing vanished overnight. Zachary's bankruptcy went through a month later. His creditors seized his remaining assets, and he was forced to move into a tiny, run-down apartment, working an entry-level data entry job to survive. I never spoke to them again. I didn't block their numbers. I simply changed mine. I secured my perimeter both physically and emotionally. A year later, I sat on the porch of the fully renovated farmhouse. The sun was setting over the Central Valley, casting a golden hue over hundreds of acres of thriving, meticulously irrigated crops. The business was generating more revenue than ever. The air smelled of damp earth and lavender. It was quiet, a deep, untouchable quiet. Looking out over the fields, I realized something profound about the nature of survival and legacy. When you are handed the bare minimum, society expects you to remain small, to be grateful for the scraps, to endlessly cater to the people who placed you at the bottom. But true justice isn't found in screaming at the people who hurt you. nor is it found in waiting for an apology that will never come. The greatest, most lethal form of justice is the act of the planter. It is taking the exact dead dirt they threw at you and quietly, ruthlessly cultivating an empire upon it. We are taught that forgiveness is mandatory for healing, especially in the later chapters of life. We are told to keep the peace, but there is no peace in allowing parasites to harvest a garden they refuse to water. Sometimes, the most deeply spiritual act of self-love is building an impenetrable wall around your success and watching the people who expected you to fail starve outside the gates. My family thought my value was tied to what they gave me. They didn't understand that a seed doesn't need the farmer's permission to grow. It only needs to outlast the winter. I walked back inside my warm, beautifully lit house. The commercial debt was paid in full. The title was clear. The legacy was protected. I had built my kingdom from the dirt up, and the gates were locked forever. If you've ever been handed dirt and expected to fail, share this story. Let them know we build our own empires,